The text message arrived between lease agreement reviews at my office. The bright screen of my phone illuminated the carefully organized stack of property management documents on my desk. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 24-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account. My hands, calloused from years of helping elderly patients before my career change, remained steady as I read it. My voice maintained its professional tone as I guided Mrs. Peterson through her assisted living facility investment options. The only visible sign that my husband of 12 years had just demolished our marriage via text was a slight tightening around my eyes. The same expression I'd worn countless times while tending to difficult patients in my nursing days. I waited until Mrs. Peterson left, her investment portfolio securely tucked into one of our company's leather folders, before typing my response. Good luck. My name is Marie, and at 38, I had just received perhaps the most callous goodbye in history. But while David was probably gloating over his grand exit, imagining me in tears over his betrayal, I was calmly reviewing the property acquisition reports for our newest senior living development. The signs had been there for months. The late nights at the investment bank that never matched his bonus deposits, the sudden password changes on his phone, the way he'd started dropping MBA jargon into every conversation, desperately trying to assert his intellectual superiority. 3 months ago, I'd found a receipt for dinner for two at Le Bernardin on a night he'd claimed to be working on a critical merger. That same evening, I'd opened a separate bank account at a different bank, drawing on the financial acumen I'd developed while transitioning from nursing to real estate investment. A week later, when he'd suggested combining our accounts to streamline our portfolio management, his newest MBA buzzword, I'd agreed cheerfully while transferring my property management revenues to the new account. The joint account he'd just emptied? It contained exactly enough to keep him from getting suspicious, about 2 months' worth of regular deposits. The rest was safely tucked away, along with detailed records of every suspicious transaction he'd made over the past year. Continued at the office. My phone buzzed again. Don't bother begging. Sarah, and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Sarah, the ambitious new analyst at his investment bank. I'd met her at the company's quarterly earnings celebration, watched her quote business school case studies to impress David, noticed how she touched his Hermes tie when she thought no one was looking. She was young enough to be his daughter, naive enough to think her fresh MBA made her special. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I called my lawyer, the one I'd consulted 2 months ago when I'd found the Four Seasons Hotel charges on our credit card statement. The same lawyer who'd helped me protect my assets during my transition from healthcare to real estate. It's time, I said simply. He just made his move. The papers are ready, she replied. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to have him served in Miami? No rush. Let him think he's won. Another text from David. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger, after all. At least you have your little real estate venture to keep you busy. My little venture, the successful property management company I'd built from my nursing salary and careful investments, the one that now owned 3 assisted living facilities and generated more income than his investment banking position. The one whose profits I'd carefully kept separate from our joint finances, remembering lessons learned from watching elderly patients lose everything to unscrupulous relatives. I smiled, thinking of the certified letters that would greet him in Miami. Let him enjoy his moment of triumph, his delusion of superiority over the mere nurse he'd married before his MBA. Evening at Marie's house. I spent that evening in our house, my house, since I'd purchased it with the proceeds from my first successful senior living facility investment and kept it in my name alone, despite David's repeated suggestions about optimizing our real estate portfolio structure. Another lesson learned from my nursing days, watching families fight over property rights. While organizing the paperwork my lawyer would need, I found our wedding album. David looked so different then, before his MBA had turned him into a caricature of corporate ambition. These days, he wore custom suits that cost more than a month's care at our facilities, dropped Harvard Business School references into every conversation, and looked down on anyone without an advanced degree. My phone kept buzzing with texts from him, each one more condescending than the last. I've been planning the strategic exit for months. Sarah understands market dynamics in ways you never could with your practical background. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone more aligned with your career level. I've already informed my professional network. They agree our synergy had depreciated. It's just business, really. I screenshot each message, adding them to my evidence folder. Let him dig his hole deeper. My lawyer would love his casual admission of premeditation, his gleeful announcement about emptying our account. The last text caught my attention. I used the joint card to book our first-class flights and the Ritz-Carlton suite. Consider it my final dividend, LOL. Phone call to credit card company. Perfect. I called the credit card company, drawing on the same calm voice I'd used to handle difficult situations during my nursing career. Mrs. Harrison speaking. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. Of course, ma'am. Can you identify the charges? 2 first-class tickets to Miami booked today. Hotel charges at the Ritz-Carlton. And I'll need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Do you have documentation of the fraud? Text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to book travel with his girlfriend after emptying our bank account. I'll be happy to forward them. The representative's professional tone couldn't quite hide her satisfaction as she canceled the charges. David and Sarah would arrive at the airport tomorrow to find their tickets invalidated, their luxury hotel reservation canceled. More messages arrive. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the properties. I'll let you stay in your little office until you find something more appropriate to your skill level. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Did he really think he had any claim to the company I'd built by reinvesting my nursing savings? The one I'd grown by understanding what elderly care residents actually needed, not what an MBA spreadsheet suggested they should want? Had his ego grown so large that he'd forgotten whose name was on all the property deeds? Another buzz. And I know the senior living projects mean a lot to you. We can work out a fair valuation for your practical contributions. My contributions to my own business that I'd built myself, funded myself, grown myself, while he complained about my wasteful focus on resident care quality over profit margins. Evening at home. I poured a glass of wine, the expensive Bordeaux I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. The same wine I'd ordered to celebrate my first successful property acquisition, when David had dismissed my career change from nursing as playing with real estate. Tomorrow, David would learn some hard truths about property law and separate assets. But tonight, I'd enjoy the quiet and plan my next senior living facility project. Next morning. Morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry texts from David. What the hell did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our first-class tickets. The Ritz-Carlton canceled our reservation. Answer me. I silenced my phone and headed to my main office. Friday was always our busiest day for property viewings, and I had a new assisted living facility proposal to review. Life goes on, even when your investment banker husband runs off with an analyst young enough to be his daughter. Midday phone call. Around noon, his mother called. Marie, dear, David told us everything about how controlling you've been, how you never supported his career advancement. He says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with his travel plans. I put her on speaker while I reviewed architectural plans for our newest development. Did he mention emptying our joint account and charging tickets for him and his girlfriend on our credit card? Silence. Well, he said you left him no choice, that you never understood his executive lifestyle. Barbara, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he bragged about taking our money. Or maybe the one where he mocked my nursing background. Another pause. He did seem a bit elitist. I told him the texts were inappropriate. I never understood why he became so status-obsessed after his MBA. Continued phone conversation. I appreciate the call, Barbara, but I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with David's family during the proceedings. Proceedings already? Oh, yes, well. Goodbye, Marie. Later that afternoon. By late afternoon, David's sister, Amanda, was spreading family gossip through mutual friends. Apparently, David and Sarah were stuck at an airport hotel. Their luxury Miami dreams temporarily derailed. He tried using his personal credit cards, but those had been maxed out for months, buying designer suits and expensive business dinners. Another red flag I'd noted for my lawyer. Call from lawyer. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday. Given his admission of emptying the joint account and the documented credit card fraud, we're in a strong position to freeze all remaining assets. Has he been served yet? Not yet, but he'll get the papers at his new hotel address. Speaking of which, his girlfriend's LinkedIn is providing excellent evidence. She's been posting about their executive retreat all day, including some choice comments about your background in healthcare. I smiled, thinking of my own documentation. A year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, text messages that proved premeditation. David had been so focused on his grand escape that he'd never considered I might be watching, waiting, preparing, skills I'd honed during years of patient care. New message arrives. My phone buzzed with another text. You think you're so clever, but I made copies of all the property management records. Half that business is mine. My MBA gives me superior insight into asset valuation. I forwarded the text to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of David's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way about separate assets and business ownership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. A lesson I'd learned watching families fight over estates during my nursing career. Monday. Emergency court hearing. The emergency hearing on Monday was everything I could have hoped for. David showed up in his $5,000 suit and Hermes tie, the uniform of his post-MBA identity. Sarah waited outside, her youth painfully obvious under the harsh courthouse lighting, nervously adjusting her new analyst's blazer. My lawyer presented our evidence methodically. David's gleeful text about emptying our account, his credit card fraud, his documented history of hidden expenses, each piece carefully collected over months of quiet observation. The same kind of detailed record-keeping I'd learned was crucial during my nursing career. Your Honor, David's hastily hired lawyer attempted. My client admits to some impulsive decisions, but Mrs. Harrison's actions have been vindictive and calculating. Calculating? My lawyer counted. You mean prudent. My client protected her separate assets and maintained detailed records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That's not vindictive, that's smart business management. Skills she developed while building a successful healthcare property enterprise. The judge reviewed my documentation. The property deeds in my name only. The company's incorporation papers showing my sole ownership. The careful separation of business and personal finances that David had always dismissed as unsophisticated. Mr. Harrison, the judge addressed David directly. You admitted via text message to deliberately emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards to fund a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this? David shifted uncomfortably in his Italian leather chair. I was executing a strategic personal transition. By committing financial fraud? The judge raised an eyebrow. And now you're claiming rights to property that documentation shows is clearly separate from marital assets. The business grew during our marriage. David's lawyer tried again. My client's MBA-level expertise contributed to its success. The business was established before the marriage. My lawyer interrupted. And Mrs. Harrison maintained strict separation of business and personal finances throughout. We have documentation of every investment, every property acquisition, and every renovation decision. Continued at courthouse. I watched David's face as reality started sinking in. He thought this would be easy. Empty our accounts, run off with his young analyst, maybe claim half my healthcare property business in the divorce. He'd never bothered to understand my insistence on keeping things separate, had mocked my overly cautious approach as being stuck in a nurse's mindset. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct, the judge announced. All shared assets are frozen pending final dissolution. Mr. Harrison is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. But that capital's been deployed, David protested, slipping into his MBA speak. We've already allocated the resources for. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it. The judge cut him off. And Mr. Harrison, the court takes a very dim view of using shared credit cards to fund adventures with paramours. Outside the courthouse. Outside the courthouse, I heard Sarah asking David about their Miami plans. His response was lost in the sound of my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the business he'd never respected or understood. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from David. He tried claiming the senior living facilities had been his idea, that he'd provided strategic oversight during their development. He even suggested he'd been my unofficial business advisor all along, claims quickly disproven by my meticulous records showing he'd never attended a single facility planning meeting. He's getting desperate, my lawyer observed. His LinkedIn shows he's staying at Sarah's starter apartment now. Apparently, living on an entry-level analyst's salary isn't quite the executive lifestyle he imagined. Family members reaching out. David's family started reaching out, their tone markedly different from their initial accusations. We had no idea, his sister Amanda admitted during an unexpected visit to my office, watching our staff assist an elderly resident. He played the victim so well, but watching how he treated your healthcare background, how he acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed him. His mother called again, this time in tears. The things he said about your nursing career, about replacing you with someone with an MBA. I raised him better than that. I thought I did anyway. I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, but now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. Business developments. The senior living facilities thrived, ironically boosted by local business coverage of my situation. Healthcare investors started coming in specifically to show support, often committing to larger projects than they'd initially planned. My ex tried something similar. One investor confided while reviewing plans for a new facility. Thought he'd take everything in the divorce because he had the fancy degree. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them. My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from David, his tone swinging between anger and manipulation. You've ruined everything. I never meant to diminish your background. You'll regret being so uncooperative. Can't we discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement? That business would be nothing without my MBA-level insights. I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. Through industry connections, I heard Sarah was having second thoughts. Apparently, sharing her entry-level apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't afford his own place wasn't the professional mentorship she'd imagined. The age gap that had seemed sophisticated during corporate dinners felt different in the harsh light of daily reality. She updated her LinkedIn to open to new opportunities yesterday. my lawyer mentioned during an update call, and removed her connection to David this morning. Reflecting at the office, I almost felt sorry for David, almost. But then I remembered his text mocking my nursing background, the casual cruelty of his comments about my limited business acumen, the way he'd assumed I'd be helpless without his MBA-level expertise. Instead of pity, I felt something else: pride. Pride in my journey from nurse to successful property developer, in my foresight and quiet strength, in my ability to protect myself while he underestimated me. Final divorce hearing. The final divorce hearing painted a very different picture from David's imagined triumph. Gone was his executive swagger, replaced by barely concealed panic. Sarah was noticeably absent. She'd moved on to a senior analyst position at a different firm, according to industry gossip. David had shown up in his old suits, the designer wardrobe apparently returned to help repay the joint account he'd emptied. His lawyer looked tired, probably from trying to find loopholes in my documented separation of assets. Your Honor, David's lawyer attempted one last time. Despite the separate property documentation, my client contributed to the growth of his wife's business through his advanced business expertise and strategic guidance. Strategic guidance? My lawyer interrupted. Like these text messages belittling Mrs. Harrison's healthcare experience? Or these emails calling her business model unsophisticated? The judge had clearly seen enough. After the hearing, the final settlement reflected my careful planning. I kept my house, my business, and my separate assets. David got his personal possessions and his car, which was worth less than he owed on it. "You've destroyed me," he hissed as we left the courthouse. "I'll have to move back in with my parents." "No, David," I replied, thinking of all the elderly residents I'd helped protect from financial abuse. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy what I built." Outside the courthouse, his mother was waiting outside, ready to drive him to her house, his new home at 45. The irony of his situation wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd mocked my limited career aspirations was now living in his childhood bedroom while I continued expanding my healthcare property empire. "You planned this all along," he accused. "You knew this would happen." "No, I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood that real success comes from helping people, not just chasing status." His mother stepped between us. "That's enough, David. You've embarrassed yourself enough already." As they walked away, I heard her start in on him. "Honestly, what were you thinking? A 24-year-old? Emptying bank accounts? Sending those horrible texts about Marie's nursing career?" Back at the office, I watched them disappear into the parking lot, feeling nothing but relief. David had thought he was writing the ending to our story with that cruel text. Instead, he'd merely set my carefully laid plans in motion. My phone buzzed, not with texts from David this time, but with notifications of new property acquisitions and facility expansion proposals. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction he'd imagined. 6 months later, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my healthcare property company had expanded to include 2 more assisted living facilities. The irony wasn't lost on me. While David struggled to rebuild his life, the unsophisticated venture he'd dismissed was thriving. I'd hired 3 new healthcare administrators and launched a specialized memory care division that was gaining recognition in the industry. Updates through mutual connections. News of David's situation trickled back through mutual acquaintances. He tried dating apps, but found women his age weren't interested in an unemployed MBA living with his parents. Younger analysts, having heard about his history through industry networks, steered clear. Sarah had apparently warned her professional circle about him, sharing screenshots of his desperate attempts to win her back after she left. His career suffered too. The investment bank's HR department had launched an investigation into his relationship with a subordinate, resulting in a formal reprimand. The executive position he'd been expecting went to someone else, someone who didn't have a history of inappropriate relationships with junior staff. He tried to claim age discrimination, Amanda told me during an unexpected visit to our newest facility. Said they were punishing him for dating someone younger. HR just added that complaint to his file. Surprise visit from Melissa. I was surprised to see his sister touring our memory care unit, but her presence spoke volumes about how thoroughly David had alienated his own family. I know we didn't support you at first, she admitted, watching our staff interact with residents. He played the victim so well. But watching how he handled everything, how he treated your dedication to resident care. I'm ashamed we ever believed him. My lawyer kept me updated on David's continued attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Each petition was denied, his claims of intellectual property rights to my business model dismissed, based on the evidence of his own condescending messages. He actually tried arguing that his texts about your limited business acumen were just constructive criticism, she told me, laughing. The judge asked if belittling someone's healthcare experience was a new MBA teaching technique. Growing business recognition. The company's success brought unexpected validation. Healthcare industry magazines wanted to feature my story, not as a scorned wife, but as an innovative leader who successfully combined healthcare expertise with property development. Young healthcare professionals asked for advice about transitioning into business ownership. The best protection is understanding your residents' needs, I told one young nurse who reminded me of my younger self. Financial success follows when you put care first. Occasional updates from family. David's mother called occasionally, usually after he'd made another poor decision. He tried day trading, hoping for a quick fix to his financial problems. Then he got involved in a cryptocurrency scheme that promised executive-level returns. Each attempt to recover his former lifestyle just dug him deeper into trouble. I don't know where we went wrong with him, she sighed during one call. His father and I offered to help him get back on his feet if he'd just take responsibility for his actions, but he's still blaming everyone else. You, Sarah, his former firm, the judge. I listened politely, but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my concern anymore. 1 year later, my life had moved forward, filled with plans for a specialized dementia care facility and a possible expansion into rehabilitation centers. The only reminder of David's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office. His final text, before I blocked his number, "Have fun with your little healthcare venture. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age." Below it sat my latest healthcare property developer of the year award. Proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. Grand opening of new facility. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a grand opening for our third memory care center. The event attracted healthcare industry media, and the story they wanted to tell wasn't about my failed marriage. It was about a nurse who'd successfully transformed patient care experience into a thriving business model. During the event, Sarah unexpectedly walked in. She looked younger than ever, or maybe I just felt that much stronger. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her portfolio like a shield. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I believed everything he told me about how you were holding back his career, how you didn't understand modern business practices. Then I watched him try the same manipulation tactics on me when things got tough." I continued reviewing care protocols with our new staff. "Those weren't business practices, Sarah. They were ego trips. There's a difference." "I know that now." She paused, then added, "He tried to move in when you froze the accounts. Thought my starter apartment would be temporary." After 2 weeks of him criticizing my entry-level lifestyle and suggesting I take out loans for a luxury condo, I understood what you meant about the difference between business and ego. I actually laughed at that. Let me guess, he had big plans but no way to fund them? Exactly. everything was going to work out once his crypto investments paid off, once he got that executive position, once his business coaching website went viral. She shook her head. I'm leading my own analyst team now. We have student loans and share an office, but at least we're building something real. Back to business. After she left, my head nurse whispered, "Was that the girlfriend?" "No," I replied. "That was just another professional who learned the same lesson I did." Speaking of lessons, I gestured to a group of healthcare investors examining our new memory care wing. Let's talk about your idea for expanding our rehabilitation services. The business had become more than just a company. It was a model for combining healthcare expertise with property development. Young healthcare professionals often sought my advice, and I always emphasized the importance of putting patient care first. Final family contact. David's mother called one last time, not to discuss David, but to thank me. "You taught our family an important lesson," she said, "about enabling bad behavior, about making excuses for arrogance." David's still living at home, still blaming everyone else for his problems, but we're not defending him anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. I thought about that legacy as I reviewed plans for a fourth facility. David had intended to diminish me, to trade me in for a younger model, and take half of everything I'd built. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. David filed another petition to revisit the settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay court costs. "Thought you'd enjoy that." I smiled, thinking of him in his childhood bedroom, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been determined the moment he underestimated the nurse he'd married. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. 2 years later, business conference. 2 years after David's cruel text message, I received an invitation to speak at a healthcare property development conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about building sustainable care facilities that prioritize resident needs. My story had evolved from cautionary tale to business inspiration. During the Q&A session, a nurse asked about transitioning into property development. "My husband says I'm being too cautious, that I should just trust his business instincts." "My ex-husband said the same thing," I replied, "right up until he tried to claim half my business in our divorce." Trust your healthcare experience. Understanding patient needs isn't being cautious, it's being smart. Business growth. The healthcare property group had grown to 5 facilities, each specializing in different aspects of elder care. The little venture David had mocked now employed over 30 healthcare professionals and had been featured in several medical industry publications. Through mutual connections, I heard David had finally moved out of his parents' house into a small apartment above a garage. He'd had to take a middle management position at a smaller firm after his former company downsized, eliminating his investment banking role during restructuring. His LinkedIn still listed him as an executive strategist, though his profile photo was clearly outdated. Unexpected outcome. Sarah, ironically, had become a regular consultant for our facility's financial planning. She'd earned her CFA and started her own healthcare investment advisory firm. "You inspired me," she told me once, showing how specialized knowledge creates more value than empty credentials. I kept David's cruel text message framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Below it hung a sign that read, "Care first, success follows." 5-year anniversary celebration. At the 5-year anniversary celebration of our first senior living facility, I stood addressing my staff and residents. The space had been transformed from a single healthcare venture into the flagship location of a thriving care-focused business empire. David's mother attended, though I hadn't sent her an invitation. She waited until the residents had returned to their activities to approach me. "I saw David yesterday," she said, smoothing her dress, one she'd bought to wear when visiting her friend in our premium care wing. He's still talking about getting his executive position back, still claiming his MBA should count for more than hands-on experience. But watching what you've built here. She gestured to the residents enjoying their afternoon activities, to the staff providing attentive care. This is what real success looks like. I watched a nurse helping a resident with her physical therapy, remembering my own days of direct patient care. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or proving someone wrong. It's about staying true to your values and letting the results speak for themselves.